Welcome to the Joyful Mate podcast. Join your joyful journey mentor, Anthony Hartcher, as we explore the path to inner joy and fulfillment. Each episode we dive into the science of happiness, share personal insights, and invite you to be part of this interactive book writing adventure. You'll hear from experts in the field of joy, happiness, and fulfillment who will share their wisdom and experiences. Let's embark on this journey together. Let's make happiness part of your everyday. Welcome on the Joyful Mate podcast. How are you, Kathy Ozakovic?
I'm very happy to be here.
So great to have you on this podcast. You've been on my other podcast, Health Up, many times. I think we've done at least 3 together. So really look forward to you sharing your insights and wisdom with the Joyful Mate listeners. But they won't be familiar with your backstory and how you've arrived at what you're doing today. So let's start with that.
Where do you want me to start in terms of being a health and wellness strategist with a background in dietetics? So really coming from that scientific medical background, having worked in the hospital wards where there's a lot of disease, and going into private practice and really having this feeling of there was a method to how I was doing things. I just didn't know it. So I've always been more of a coach, more of a guide, more of a really picking people's brains on what was keeping them back. And this is more behavioral science. I just didn't know that it was a thing. It was when I started studying health and wellness coaching that I saw, oh wow, I'm actually doing the right thing. Because when I was strictly in dietetics, I always felt that I was doing something wrong. So really adding onto my credentials, adding onto my studies, going into health and wellness coaching, exploring myself and doing breath work as well. So tapping into more spiritual realms and really inundating myself with over 200 books over 2 years and exploring all these concepts. And I'm really excited to share what I've learned about joy and happiness along the way too.
Yeah, well, let's get into what is joy and happiness to you.
Well, this is the thing, right? So for me, having done the work that I've done over the last 3 years, really exiting a codependent relationship, which took me on this journey, it was really this journey of what else don't I know? What else have I not been taught? What else can I learn? And that took me down the path of a lot of topics. In the health space, in the space of the body's innate ability to heal itself and how to create that environment for that to occur, but also in the mindset space. And I've really found that emotional intelligence and emotional mastery is a key to pulling everything together. And joy and happiness being part of that as well. And I really want to differentiate between the two because my research and my personal belief, again, my personal beliefs are based on my research. Everything that I've read, everything that I've experienced, the teachers that I've had, the guides that I've had, the coaches that I've had as well, self-exploring myself. This is how I formed my own beliefs. But there are definitely people that I look up to in this area that I'll be mentioning as well. So looking at the frequency of emotions, joy is actually higher than happiness, slightly higher. So I actually have the numbers here. Happiness sits at about 432 hertz, whereas joy is 540. It's that level up. Now, what is the difference? Personally, I've read Solve for Happy by Mo, I'm going to butcher his name, I'm so sorry, Mo Gaudat, and Dr. Daniel Amen, You Happier. So there's these really 2 different concepts about happiness. So Mo Gaudat in Soul for Happy talks about happiness being related to happenings, a really easy way to remember it. So it's really our own perception of, is this happening something that I want? Is this a good happening or is this a bad happening? Am I at peace with the happenings in my life? Now, again, this comes back to meaning making. Now, to actually excel from happenings or happiness into joy, it's all about the meaning that we make of it and the purpose. So joy comes more from a state of clarity about the purpose. So it's detaching from the happenings. It's detaching from whatever happens in life happens. There's a certain point and there are things that we can't control, but what are we making it mean? And how are we framing it for a greater purpose? How is this leading us towards what we really want in life? So that's what I found with his perspective on it. And also he highlights that positive emotions are in the present. And I think that joy is more present than happiness. Coming back to happiness and happenings and things that have already happened, it's more of a past tense, whereas joy, I see joy as really playful. I feel joy when I'm just staring at the clouds, when I'm just in the moment, when I find a ladybug in my iceberg lettuce, when I find a four-leaf clover. I'm really present in the moment. That's joy to me. And then Dr. Daniel Amen in You Happier, he highlights that there is nothing more important than the quality of decisions that we make. And the quality of our decisions is reflected in the quality of our physical brain. So how well we take care of ourselves and our brain. So coming back to physical health and brain health, so the foods that we eat, but also what we expose ourselves to. And he actually shares these principles of neuroscience, teaches us that better decisions are made when you know what you want. Start to notice the crossover here. Joy, being really clear about purpose, and then neuroscience teaches us that better decisions are made when you know what you want. That's a different way of saying purpose. Clarity. Where are you headed? What is your vision? Then also balancing your blood sugar levels. We all know about the hangry state. We want to balance our blood sugar levels and keep our physical body actually moving forward towards our vision. Managing stress as well. So managing stress, and I want to highlight there's a difference between managing stress and dealing with the stressor. So you can manage your stress and you can go through the stress cycle, that emotion of stress, and release the stress without actually dealing with the stressor, whether that is a thing or a person or a circumstance. We can put that on hold whilst we actually support the body to go through the stress cycle and that emotion cycle and let go of it. Also, he highlights exercise, improves our cognition and supports neuroplasticity. And he also talks about protecting our decisions using HALT. So never allow yourself to get too hungry, too angry, too lonely, or too tired, I believe the last one was. You start to notice the crossovers between the two books and the two kind of theories of health and happiness and joy. Joy being that little bit higher, definitely. And also, I really like the SPIRE model. So these are kind of the three books and the three models that I've based my perception of happiness on. And the SPIRE model, it says that we achieve happiness indirectly through spiritual health, actively working on our spiritual health, our physical health, our intellectual health, relational, and emotional. And again, there's a huge crossover because if you're talking about spiritual health, you're talking about purpose. You're talking about vision and clarity and service. If you're talking about physical health, you're talking about brain health. And intellectual is all about choices, making decisions. Relational health, well, this is all about leaning into discomfort and learning how to co-create and collaborate and looking at conflict as an opportunity to connect. And emotional health, I truly believe emotional health, and we're talking about happiness and joy, emotional health, emotional mastery and intelligence, it's reconnecting with your body and your intuition, because this is something that we had as children, but over time, because there's so much noise in society, we cut it off and we dissociate. When we don't have the tools to actually process really big emotions at young ages, we dissociate from our body because it's a protective mechanism. So slowly, this whole journey of finding ourselves again is relearning and remembering.
Wow, that was very thorough in your, I guess, rounding up of, joy and happiness and what you've discovered through reading various books and how you've taken parts of each book and sort of come up with your own synopsis of joy and happiness. And I can, that book about the happenings, like it sort of, to me, it reminds me of, I think it was John Lennon's quote, is life is what happens. And so if things happen and they happen in how you would like them to happen, then so that it's externally driven, right? It's not much you can control, but it seems to all the stars align and you feel happy because things have just happened the way you projected you wanted them to happen. However, joy is more internal and linked to meaning and purpose, and as you said, clarity. And so I think with the joy is that we can discover that more frequently because no matter what happens, we find the joy in it, as opposed to just looking and searching for happiness and hoping that everything aligns to the way we want it to align. And if you get back to life is what happens, well, there's so much out of our control. As you mentioned, there's the extrinsic factors that we certainly have no control over, well beyond our influence. But certainly what we have control over is ourselves and how we respond, our actions to certain events in life. And as you said, we have the ability to find and extract meaning from whatever happens. So yeah, I really like the way you've defined it. It's
Yeah,
nice.
What you're mentioning there is definitely, that's the emotional mastery. That's the key. And the thing is, life's going to happen, events are going to happen, and the meaning that we make of it. However, there's this element of surrender and trust when it comes to joy and this meaning making and this purpose. Whatever happens, if we are truly moving towards our purpose, if we are truly clear and we are aligning, so I also believe that happiness and joy comes from alignment, even when it gets hard. Like, there are so many things in my life that have not been easy. It has not been easy to go through explant surgery. It has not been easy to exit that codependent relationship when that was everything that I knew. But I had this underlying drive, purpose, and clarity towards what I was going towards, and it was a realignment. I'd strayed off path, and this was me realigning. And even though it was hard and difficult and not easy, I was still happy and joyful to be getting back in alignment because I was feeling closer and closer towards the version of me that I want to become. And to this day, it's the same. And my understanding of it just keeps expanding the same way that my ability to hold emotion has expanded. So really, there's this real sense of peace and joy, as well as all of the sadness and grief. I can have both at the same time. Things can be happening that I maybe don't perceive as good, but again, that's just the meaning that I'm giving it. I still believe that I'm in alignment, I'm going towards what I want, and everything that is not meant for me is just going to fall away. Even if it's hard at times, even if I get heartbroken along the way, I'm still trusting and moving towards what I want.
Yeah, and I think as you've reflected back on that codependent relationship and how it's directed you back to being the authentic self, and like you can see how it's really served you to get back to your most aligned version of you, which is maybe that was why you got into that relationship, was to drive you back to discovering you and loving yourself.
Yeah. Thank you. And authenticity is a whole nother story. Authenticity research has showed that its frequency is 400 times stronger than love, and love is above joy. Like, I really encourage the listeners to just look up the emotional frequency chart and have a look at where you sit. And of course, life is dynamic and we're going to go in and out. But I have also learned through my breathwork journey, there's something in breathwork, there's this point where you have oxygenated the body so much in your breathing that you get to a point where it looks like you've stopped breathing. Now, I'm not really sure scientifically what happens. We need more research when it comes to breath work. However, there's this point where the body is completely still and it is a state of bliss and oneness. And a lot of people say this is where they meet God or spirit, higher self, call it what you want. But it is this state of complete calm. and peace and bliss. And they call it point zero or 0 point. And I kind of came up with this little spiel of my own, or if we can walk into any situation at this kind of neutral point zero, bliss, oneness, and wholeness, if you walk into any happening with this attitude of point zero, I think that is where we can then elevate to the joy. If we walk in, no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. And again, that comes back to that emotional mastery as well, being point zero and just being the observer and not jumping to conclusions and just allowing things to show themselves. Because where does happiness and joy escape us? When we attach to something needing to be a certain way. So we can bring more happiness and joy if we walk in with this emotional mastery, resilience, self-regulation, and point zero attitude.
Yeah, very true in terms of that, that attachment. If we're going to experience less happiness, certainly, and joy. If we want to dissect them, we'll just talk about happiness. But if we have a certain version of happiness, then we're going to only see or feel happiness when that happens, right? But the frequency of that is going to be, I don't know, some probability there, but it certainly, if you totally detach, and you can experience a whole lot more happiness by not having a attachment to a certain form of, it has to be this way, things happen, relationships have to be this way. And if you accept the relationship as it is, then you can find and discover more happiness and fulfillment, joy in that relationship, as opposed to being attached to a certain way it's got to be.
Yeah, that's Byron Katie, loving what is. I love and accept what is, regardless of the outcome, regardless of how I'm feeling right now. I'm working towards loving and accepting what is. Those kinds of affirmations can help us to stay in that state as well. I choose to love and accept what is also very powerful. Again, moving towards it is a choice. And happiness is a choice. It's an attitude. We are in control of that. Comes back to that emotional mastery side of things as well. And I think the other important thing to notice there with this kind of a detaching from the outcome and from that kind of we grew up with some sort of a image of happiness. If we let that go, we're allowing for flow, because life is always going to have its ups and downs and flow. We just want the energy to flow through us. We want those moments to flow through us, because that also means that we're just allowing it. That's the surrender part that I mentioned before. It's the grace. It's the easefully moving through it. Even if it's grief, we can gracefully move through grief and feel it, and then find joy again and feel joy at the same time as well.
And it really gets back to what you mentioned about authenticity and that having that oneness with self. So not attaching to a certain shape of body or being attached to a certain version of, I should always be this way, if I, like I may, and I guess it gets back to this sinner and saint sort of thing. It's sort of, we think we've been brought up as thinking that we should be one-sided, and if we're not, there's something wrong with us, right? If we're not always the saint, then we're the sinner and we're evil. And whereas at the end of the day, we do both, and I guess embracing both sides of who we are, but it really creates that connection with oneness of who we are. That enables us to be and accept ultimately who we are and go forth into the world as who we are, and in a loving way. And that enables better connection with others and everything. And that this whole, as you said, this connectionness and this oneness and this state of bliss is ultimately when you love yourself and love others for who they are, as opposed to that state of judgment, which then brings up emotions and all those other
I absolutely love the path that you've taken there, because what's coming up for me now is integration. So really what you're mentioning is a bit of shadow work. We have dark shadows, we have light shadows, we have these parts of ourselves, and integration is necessary for completion. If we can integrate the parts of ourselves, we really meet them. Our shadow selves, they want to be seen and heard and held. They want to be befriended. They want to be acknowledged and validated, because they served us at a point in our life. Even if the behaviors are unresourceful, and it's actually the seat of much of our creativity, and they just need a stage. So we need to find a resourceful way to actually show them to the world, integrating those parts of ourselves. And again, everything starts from self. We can't meet another as deeply if we haven't met ourselves and met our own shadows. We can't show them understanding, and we can't create this non-judgmental environment unless we've done the work ourselves to go there and to really peel back and understand you are not your behaviors. You are not your thoughts. You are not even your emotions. You are the soul, the observer of yourself going through this human experience. And part of that human experience is having emotions and letting them flow through your body. Otherwise, they get stuck, and we know that that leads to disease, this kind of a blockage of the flow. So really peeling it back, again, bringing it back to the books that I read and what I mentioned. And this is why I love that I come from a background of dietetics, because I really believe that a really good place to start is with what you eat, because everything is chemicals, and all we are is a whole host of chemical reactions, and what we eat interacts with those chemicals and metabolism. The more we purify the body, the more we take care of our physical health, our brain, neuroplasticity, cleansing. This is where we get a greater connection with spirit and our soul's spirit self as well, and can actually work towards that emotional mastery. This is why I work with people on the habits first, on the habits of nutrition, movement, sleep, optimizing the stress response, light therapy, mindset, and spirituality. We go through those habits to allow the connection to be greater. And I purposely mentioned spirituality at the end. It's the seventh pillar. We don't get there until we've actually nailed the other one.
It brings up this sense that at the moment there's a lot of people at ease, or not at ease, but very at discomfort because of the US situation with the president. And I often reflect on Donald Trump and what he's saying and why people feel uneasy. And it comes back to that. We see the world as we are and not as it is. And so what people are judging in Donald Trump is what they haven't loved in themselves. And so for me, I think Donald Trump is the awakening that the world's needed in order to love the whole self and become at one with self and the best authentic version, and to love that shadow side that you mentioned. So I find it very interesting in watching what's going on in this US dynamic and what people are saying and how they're judging, and very much judgmental in terms of but it's themselves actually judging themselves, because it's something that they haven't loved and owned within themselves. Yeah, so it's a really interesting dynamic, and it's a hard thing to bring up when people are so emotionally and so irrational about what Trump is doing. And you can't really walk down the street and have these sort of conversations, because if you do, you'll get shot or beaten up. Because
this is a thing as well. That comes back to emotional mastery. It comes back to point zero. It comes back to being able to accept that things are happening around us, and how is this affecting your life? And do you want to be part of the problem, or do you want to be part of the solution? What are you focusing on? Fix your focus. And like I said, you can learn to expand how much you can hold. You can hold space for both. I think that having a general awareness of what's happening in the world is important for just your own informative space, to just being informed. And again, it's that point zero, just okay, that's happening, but what am I focusing on? How am I contributing to raising the frequency of the world? How do I focus on staying in my lane and my frequency and increasing that authenticity? That's going to bring more happiness and joy into your life, which is contagious. The same way that the victimhood mindset is contagious, the same way that bad news is contagious, so is happiness and joy. So if we just focus on fixing our focus, staying in our lane, knowing what we know, and other people around us will start to shift as well.
Yeah, I like how you've touched on fixing our focus, because that's something in our control, right? The way we're perceiving things and judging things, if we look at us and start to reflect as to why we're thinking that way, and keep asking ourselves why, we'll get to the bottom as to why we are judging what we're judging. And ultimately, need to go through a process of eventually, probably bringing up memories from the past of an instant where you've done a similar act to someone else and you feel guilty or shameful for it. And hence, when you see Trump doing it, you feel that guilt and shame within you. And so he's ultimately there to help bring that out of you and to make you love yourself for who you are and not be too cruel to the shadow side, and embrace it and integrate it, as you've said. Kathy, is there any parting words you'd like to leave the listeners with whilst we wrap this up? And obviously, please share also how the listeners can best connect with you.
I think when it comes to happiness and joy, alignment is my biggest tip. Aligning yourself with what you want to achieve. So again, this comes, peel it back even more. You need to have a clear vision. Where are you headed? What do you want to create in your life? What is your purpose in this season? It might not be for the rest of your life, but maybe for the next 3 years of your life. What are you really working towards? What is that clear vision? What do you want to feel more of? So getting to know your values so that you can start to take actions in that direction and making sure that you're staying on path. And then coming back, recalibrating. If you sway, recalibrating. So really aligning yourself with your values is going to lead to more happiness and joy as you start to get there. Yeah.
Fantastic. And please share with the listeners as to how they can connect with you.
So Instagram, Kathy Ozakovic, Kathy O, and New Fit Wellness is my company. You can send me an email, contact me through my DMs, that's fine as well, or on Facebook.
And I just want to say thank you once again, Kathy, for coming on the show and sharing your insights and wisdoms on happiness, joy, and fulfillment. And to the listeners, please share it with others that you believe could benefit from Kathy's insights. We would love to get this message far and wide to raise the frequency of society and take us to a higher level of joy, love, authenticity. So let's go up the ladder, up the frequency. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.